Dr. Nathan Ellis has always prided himself on making the right decisions, until a single moment changes everything. When an elderly black man, Isaiah Brooks, is brought into Nathan's hospital, he refuses to treat him, dismissing the case as unimportant. The next day, Nathan's world is upended when Isaiah, a man who holds the key to his past, takes the stage at a prestigious medical conference. Shattered by guilt and the revelation of who Isaiah truly is, Nathan embarks on a journey of redemption. But will he be able to confront his own biases? And will Isaiah grant the forgiveness Nathan so desperately seeks? In a world where one decision can change everything, The Measure of Mercy is a poignant and powerful story of reckoning, healing, and the fight to make amends before it's too late. Dr. Nathan Ellis prides himself on being one of the top surgeons in the country. With a sterling reputation and a career built on precision and excellence, he's convinced he's always made the right choices. But when an elderly black man, Isaiah Brooks, is brought into his hospital in need of urgent care, Nathan makes a fateful decision, one he'll soon regret. Citing lack of insurance and an overbooked schedule, Nathan refuses to treat Isaiah, sending him home without a second thought. The next day, at a prestigious medical conference, Nathan's world is upended when Isaiah takes the stage as the keynote speaker. Revealed to be a civil rights leader and a quiet benefactor of the very programs that helped shape Nathan's career, Isaiah delivers a moving lecture about prejudice and the healthcare system, without ever naming names. As Nathan watches in stunned silence, he realizes that the man he refused to help is the one who had unknowingly helped him the most. Haunted by guilt and the weight of his own actions, Nathan embarks on a journey to make amends. But will Isaiah offer the forgiveness Nathan so desperately seeks? And can Nathan come to terms with the biases that led him astray, or will his past decisions ruin everything he's worked for? Nathan is a tall, athletic 40-year-old man with short brown hair, light stubble, and sharp, intense blue eyes. His neatly pressed scrubs and well-kept appearance reflect his disciplined nature. Backstory: Nathan grew up in a middle-class family with parents who instilled in him the importance of hard work. A scholarship allowed him to attend medical school, where he became one of the top students. Over the years, Nathan's focus on achievement led him to lose sight of the compassion that first drew him to medicine. He has blind spots when it comes to his own biases, believing in a meritocratic system without understanding the struggles others face. Physical description: Isaiah is a dignified, 78-year-old black man with gray hair, weathered skin, and kind yet weary brown eyes. He walks with a slight limp, his tall frame still carrying the strength of his younger years. His voice is calm but powerful, and his presence commands respect. Backstory: Isaiah grew up in the segregated South and became a prominent civil rights leader in his youth. After decades of fighting for equality, he dedicated himself to quietly funding educational and medical programs to support underprivileged communities. Despite his achievements, Isaiah remains humble, never seeking recognition for his contributions. His belief in the power of redemption fuels his desire to mentor and educate, even in the face of personal injustice. Physical description: Sarah is a 38-year-old African-American woman with shoulder-length curly hair, warm brown eyes, and a gentle smile. She wears practical yet stylish clothing, exuding confidence and empathy. Backstory: Sarah, a close colleague of Nathan's, was raised by a single mother who instilled in her the importance of community. Her path to becoming a doctor was not easy, but her determination and compassion drove her success. She has always been aware of racial biases within the medical field, and she often challenges Nathan's more clinical approach to patient care. Sarah is both a friend and moral compass for Nathan, encouraging him to reflect on his decisions. Physical description: Alan is a 65-year-old white man with thinning gray hair and a stout build. His round glasses rest low on his nose, and his face is framed by deep laugh lines. He often dresses in a tweed jacket over his scrubs, giving him an old-fashioned but approachable appearance. Backstory: Alan is Nathan's mentor and the head of the hospital's surgical department. He was a close friend of Isaiah Brooks in his younger years, though Nathan is unaware of their connection. Alan's decades of experience have made him both wise and introspective, and he frequently reminds his staff that medicine is about more than just physical healing, it's about humanity. He plays a key role in helping Nathan confront his own shortcomings. A modern, state-of-the-art hospital located in a bustling metropolitan city. The hallways are pristine, lined with glass windows and high-tech equipment, reflecting the cold, efficient nature of the institution. This setting highlights the contrast between the impersonal nature of the healthcare system and the human stories that unfold within its walls. A large, elegant room with high ceilings, chandeliers, and rows of plush seating, designed to host important medical conferences. The room is filled with accomplished doctors and medical students, with the atmosphere of prestige and intellectual achievement. It is here that Isaiah delivers his powerful speech, turning this place of recognition into a stage for moral reckoning. A small but cozy single-story house located in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house is filled with mementos from Isaiah's past, including photos from civil rights marches and old books lining the walls. The warmth and history of the space reflect Isaiah's quiet strength and humble nature, providing a stark contrast to the cold hospital setting. A sleek, minimalist office within the hospital, decorated with medical accolades and certificates on the walls. The space is organized and sterile, much like Nathan himself. It serves as a reflection of his career-driven mindset, but as the story progresses, this space begins to feel more suffocating, symbolizing his inner turmoil. Cause: Dr. Nathan Ellis is informed about Isaiah's critical condition. Effect: Nathan declines to treat him, citing lack of insurance and workload. Cause: Isaiah is discharged without proper treatment, thanking the staff despite his condition. Effect: Nathan feels a momentary pang of guilt but dismisses it, focusing on his upcoming conference. Cause: Nathan prepares for his lecture on efficiency in medicine. Effect: Sarah brings up Isaiah's case, hinting that Nathan may have made a poor decision. Cause: Isaiah unexpectedly delivers the keynote address. Effect: His powerful speech on prejudice and healthcare leaves Nathan visibly shaken. Cause: Nathan realizes Isaiah funded the scholarship that supported his own education. Effect: Overwhelmed by guilt, Nathan stumbles through his presentation and rushes to find out more about Isaiah. Cause: Nathan returns to the hospital, seeking information on Isaiah's condition. Effect: Sarah reveals that Isaiah's condition worsened after discharge, sparking Nathan's fear. Cause: Nathan tries to track Isaiah down, realizing that he left the hospital without being fully treated. Effect: He learns from a nurse that Isaiah has a long history of funding scholarships, and that many in the medical community owe their success to him. Cause: Nathan finds Isaiah's modest home and hesitantly knocks on the door. Effect: Isaiah's daughter answers, surprised to see Nathan. She agrees to let him in to speak to Isaiah. Cause: Nathan enters Isaiah's home, struggling to find the words to apologize. Effect: Isaiah, sensing Nathan's discomfort, remains calm but refuses to engage emotionally, leaving Nathan feeling even more remorseful. Cause: After leaving Isaiah's home, Nathan contacts Sarah, admitting his mistake and asking for advice on how to make amends. Effect: Sarah suggests Nathan work to understand the systemic biases that led him to make that choice. Cause: Nathan meets with Dr. Alan Porter, his mentor, seeking guidance on how to handle his guilt. Effect: Alan reveals his close friendship with Isaiah and shares stories of Isaiah's impact on the community. Cause: Alan shares Isaiah's struggles during the civil rights movement and how Isaiah has worked for years to uplift marginalized communities. Effect: Nathan begins to realize the depth of his own privilege and the ways in which he has benefited from Isaiah's efforts without ever acknowledging them. Cause: Nathan takes a few days off work, grappling with his guilt and reflecting on how his biases clouded his judgment. Effect: He becomes determined to change, but doesn't know how to approach Isaiah again. Cause: Nathan receives a handwritten letter from Isaiah, thanking him for visiting but remaining firm in his quiet disapproval. Effect: The letter pushes Nathan to take further action, realizing that words are not enough. Cause: Nathan speaks with Sarah and Alan, asking for their help in organizing a new initiative to support underprivileged patients at the hospital. Effect: He resolves to begin a scholarship fund in Isaiah's name and dedicates himself to undoing some of the harm he caused. Nathan learns that Isaiah's health is deteriorating, prompting him to try and visit him once again. Effect: Isaiah's daughter, however, blocks his visit, saying Isaiah doesn't want to see him until Nathan proves he's truly changed. Nathan begins implementing the initiative at the hospital, making policy changes that prioritize equal access to care for all patients, regardless of insurance or background. Effect: he faces resistance from some colleagues and administration, but Sarah stands by him. The hospital board pushes back on Nathan's initiative, concerned about the financial and logistical implications. Effect: Nathan refuses to back down, leveraging his reputation and the support of Dr. Porter and Sarah to continue pushing for change. Nathan publicly announces the creation of the Isaiah Brooks Scholarship Fund at a hospital event, which Isaiah's daughter attends in his place. Effect: this gesture moves Isaiah's daughter, though she still questions whether it's enough to heal the damage done. Sarah encourages Nathan to continue his work, telling him that real change doesn't happen overnight, but that he's taken the right steps. Effect: Nathan, humbled by the experience, finds new purpose in his work, committed to treating every patient with the compassion they deserve. Isaiah's condition worsens, and Nathan is informed that he's been readmitted to the hospital. Effect: Nathan, knowing the end is near, asks to be allowed to treat him this time. Isaiah reluctantly agrees to see Nathan one last time, on the condition that Nathan treat him as a doctor, not a guilt-ridden man seeking forgiveness. Effect: Nathan, emotionally torn, accepts. The two men exchange words, Isaiah finally acknowledging Nathan's efforts without giving him a full sense of closure. Isaiah passes away quietly, surrounded by family. Nathan, while deeply affected, finds a sense of peace knowing he was able to care for him in the end. Effect: Nathan comes to understand that forgiveness is not always direct but can be found in one's actions and choices moving forward. After Isaiah's passing, Nathan continues his work on the initiative and scholarship fund, determined to live up to the legacy Isaiah left behind. Effect: the hospital's new program begins to gain recognition, and other hospitals start adopting similar policies, inspired by the work done in Isaiah's honor. Nathan visits Isaiah's grave, finally feeling a sense of closure. He speaks to Isaiah in the quiet of the cemetery, thanking him for everything he's done and promising to carry his legacy forward. Effect: with his heart lighter, Nathan leaves with renewed purpose, knowing that while he can't undo the past, he can shape a better future. Nathan attends a community meeting where many of the beneficiaries of Isaiah's scholarship fund and Nathan's initiative share their gratitude and stories. Effect: Nathan is moved by the profound impact Isaiah had on countless lives and realizes the ripple effect of one man's actions. Sarah and Nathan grow closer as friends and colleagues, united by their shared goal of reforming the hospital's practices. Effect: together, they build a team of doctors and advocates who work to ensure all patients receive the care they deserve. Nathan reflects on the man he was at the start of the story compared to who he's become. Effect: he acknowledges the ongoing work that needs to be done but is proud of the transformation he's undergone. Nathan speaks at an event celebrating the hospital's new policies, giving credit to Isaiah for sparking the change. Effect: as Nathan speaks, he sees Isaiah's daughter in the audience, offering a nod of approval, signaling a sense of closure and acceptance. Nathan, Sarah, and Alan gather at the hospital's new wing dedicated to Isaiah Brooks, reflecting on how far they've come. Effect: Nathan walks through the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face the challenges of the future, knowing that he carries Isaiah's legacy with him. Dr. Nathan Ellis stood in the bustling emergency room of Central Medical Hospital. The sterile white walls and beeping machines created a cacophony that had become the background music of his life. He glanced at his watch. His shift had been relentless, and his mind was already on the upcoming medical conference. He was set to give a talk on efficiency in healthcare, a topic that had become his mantra. A nurse approached him, clipboard in hand, her brow furrowed. "Dr. Ellis, We have an elderly man in critical condition. Isaiah Brooks. He needs immediate attention. Nathan barely looked up from the chart he was reviewing. Does he have insurance? The nurse hesitated. No, sir. He doesn't. Nathan sighed, the weight of his schedule pressing down on him. We're overbooked as it is. Send him to another facility. We can't take him right now. The nurse's eyes widened in disbelief, but she nodded, turning away with a silent urgency. Nathan didn't think twice about the decision. Efficiency was key, and there was no room for sentimentality in his line of work. Isaiah Brooks sat in the small, cramped hospital bed, his breathing labored but his expression calm. He smiled at the nurse who handed him his discharge papers. I appreciate your time, young lady, Isaiah said, his voice a gravelly whisper. The nurse gave him a weak smile in return, her eyes filled with pity. I'm so sorry, Mr. Brooks. We'll arrange transport for you. Isaiah nodded, gathering his modest belongings, a worn leather jacket and a tattered book of poems. Despite the worsening pain in his chest, he thanked the staff as he was wheeled out of the emergency room. From his office window, Nathan caught a glimpse of the man leaving. For a brief moment, a pang of something, guilt maybe, flickered in his chest. But it was gone as quickly as it had come, buried under the weight of his responsibilities. The next morning, Nathan stood in his office, adjusting his tie in the reflection of his sleek, minimalist desk. The prestigious medical conference loomed ahead, and he felt the usual mixture of excitement and nerves. His talk on streamlining hospital procedures had garnered much attention, and he was eager to make an impression. His colleague, Dr. Sarah Williams, knocked on the door before stepping inside. Her presence was always calming, her warm brown eyes filled with empathy, an empathy Nathan often felt he lacked. Ready for the big day? She asked with a smile. Nathan nodded, though his mind wasn't entirely focused. I'm prepared. It's just another presentation. Sarah studied him for a moment. I heard about the man you discharged last night. Isaiah Brooks, right? Nathan frowned. What about him? Do you think you made the right decision? He didn't have insurance, but he was in bad shape. You know, sometimes it's not all about efficiency, she said gently. Nathan shrugged, brushing off the comment. We don't have the resources to treat every case that walks through the door. You know how it is. Sarah's expression softened, but she didn't press further. Just think about it, Nathan. We're doctors for a reason. It's not just about procedures and schedules. He waved her off with a forced smile. I'll keep that in mind. Hours later, Nathan found himself seated in the large lecture hall, surrounded by the most accomplished doctors and medical professionals in the country. The room was filled with a sense of prestige, and Nathan was eager for his moment to shine. The keynote speaker was introduced, and Nathan's attention drifted. He hadn't paid much attention to who it was, as his thoughts were consumed with rehearsing his speech in his head. Please welcome Mr. Isaiah Brooks. Nathan froze, the name snapping him out of his reverie. He turned toward the stage and saw the very same man he had discharged just the night before. Isaiah Brooks, dressed in a simple but dignified suit, walked slowly to the podium, his limp more pronounced than it had been in the hospital. As Isaiah began to speak, the room grew silent. His voice, though weakened by age, held a power that commanded attention. He spoke about the healthcare system, about the silent biases and inefficiencies that left many without care. His words were sharp, but not accusatory. He didn't name names, didn't point fingers. He simply spoke the truth. Nathan's heart began to race. Isaiah wasn't just any patient. He was a prominent civil rights leader, a man who had spent decades quietly funding educational and medical programs for underprivileged communities. Programs, Nathan realized, that had helped shape his own career. Programs that had given him the scholarships he needed to attend medical school. Isaiah's speech left Nathan visibly shaken. He had refused to help the very man who had unknowingly helped him the most. Nathan's palms were sweaty as he ascended the stage for his own presentation. His mind was a blur of guilt and disbelief. How could he have been so blind? He stumbled through his presentation, his words falling flat as the weight of his actions pressed down on him. When it was over, he rushed off the stage, barely acknowledging the polite applause from the audience. He needed answers. He needed to know more about Isaiah. Back at the hospital later that evening, Nathan pulled up Isaiah's file. He scrolled through the records, his guilt mounting with every piece of information he uncovered. Isaiah's condition had worsened after his discharge. His blood pressure was dangerously high, his heart struggling under the strain of years of hard work and neglect. Nathan's hands trembled as he realized the full extent of his mistake. This wasn't just about a bad decision. This was about the systemic biases that had led him to make that decision in the first place. As the night wore on, Nathan sat alone in his office, staring at the screen. The sterile, organized space that had once brought him comfort now felt suffocating. His entire career had been built on precision and efficiency, but in his pursuit of perfection, he had lost sight of what truly mattered. He closed Isaiah's file and leaned back in his chair, the guilt gnawing at him. He knew he had to make amends. But would Isaiah even want to hear an apology from the man who had turned him away? Nathan wasn't sure, but he knew one thing: he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Nathan couldn't focus. The image of Isaiah standing on that stage, his presence commanding respect despite his frail body, haunted him. Nathan's hands trembled as he clicked through the hospital records. Isaiah Brooks had been discharged less than 24 hours ago, but something inside Nathan urged him to check on his condition. He entered the patient records and searched for Isaiah. His breath caught when he saw the latest note from the attending nurse. Isaiah's condition had worsened after discharge. His blood pressure had spiked, and he was complaining of severe chest pain. Nathan's heart raced. "What have I done? Sarah?" he called out as he rushed down the hall, looking for the one person who might help him make sense of this mess. He found her in the break room, sipping coffee, her eyes widening as soon as she saw his frantic face. "Nathan? What's wrong?" "It's Isaiah Brooks. His condition got worse after he left." "I shouldn't have." Nathan's words caught in his throat. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Sarah's expression softened, but her tone remained firm. "You shouldn't have turned him away, Nathan." "I know. I just didn't think," he began, but Sarah cut him off. "That's the problem. You didn't think about him, Nathan. You thought about schedules, efficiency, protocols. But you forgot about people." Her voice was steady, but Nathan could feel the weight of her disappointment. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "What do I do now?" Sarah sighed and sat down across from him. "You try to make it right. Find him, Nathan. Check on him. It's not too late." Her words hit Nathan like a wave. She was right. If there was even a chance he could fix this, he had to take it. Nathan's footsteps echoed in the sterile hospital corridor as he tracked down the nurse who had been in charge of Isaiah's case. She was busy at the nurse's station, but when she saw the tension on Nathan's face, she gave him her full attention. "Do you know where Isaiah Brooks went after he was discharged?" Nathan asked, his voice taut with urgency. The nurse frowned, scanning through her notes. "He left in a hospital transport. I think he lives in a small house just outside the city. He didn't say much, but I remember him mentioning he's been living there alone for years." Nathan nodded, thankful for the lead. But as he turned to leave, the nurse added something that stopped him in his tracks. "You know, Dr. Ellis, Mr. Brooks has helped a lot of people. Many of the doctors here, including some of our scholarship recipients, were supported by his foundation. He's never asked for anything in return." The revelation hit Nathan like a blow. Isaiah had quietly shaped the very system that allowed people like Nathan to rise to prominence, and in return, Nathan had dismissed him in his time of need. "I have to find him." Without another word, Nathan bolted from the hospital. He needed to see Isaiah. Needed to apologize. The neighborhood where Isaiah lived was a stark contrast to the sleek, modern world Nathan was used to. Isaiah's house, small and modest, stood quietly among old trees and simple homes. It wasn't rundown, but it had a weathered charm, much like its owner. Nathan hesitated as he approached the front door. His heart pounded in his chest as he raised his hand to knock. Before he could overthink it, the door opened. A woman in her mid-40s stood before him. Her eyes, a mirror of Isaiah's kind but weary gaze, met Nathan's with curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. I'm Dr. Nathan Ellis. I was one of the doctors at Central Medical," he began, suddenly unsure of his words. "I came to see Mr. Brooks. I need to speak with him." The woman, Isaiah's daughter, Nathan guessed, crossed her arms and studied him for a moment. "He's resting, but I'll see if he's up for a visitor. Wait here." Nathan stood on the porch, anxiety eating away at him. The moments stretched long, and for the first time in years, he felt vulnerable, like a man stripped of his title and power. When Isaiah's daughter returned, she nodded. "You can come in. He's awake." Nathan stepped into the small living room, where Isaiah sat in a recliner, his frail body draped in a knitted blanket. The room was filled with the scent of fresh coffee, and photos of a long, full life adorned the walls, pictures of civil rights marches, family gatherings, and achievements that marked a man who had given everything for others. Isaiah looked up as Nathan entered, his expression unreadable. His calm brown eyes were weary but full of wisdom, and his presence, even in his weakened state, was commanding. "Mr. Brooks," Nathan began, his voice low, "I came to apologize." Isaiah didn't speak immediately, his gaze steady and thoughtful. Nathan fumbled for words. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his guilt. "I made a terrible mistake. I didn't realize who you were, what you've done. I didn't treat you like a person. I'm so sorry." The silence in the room was suffocating, but Isaiah remained calm, his hands folded in his lap. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but firm. "You're not here because of who I am, Dr. Ellis. You're here because you know you failed to see the man in front of you. It's not about titles or achievements. It's about compassion." Nathan's throat tightened. "You're right. I've let myself get caught up in this world of schedules and efficiency, and I forgot what it means to truly care for people." Isaiah gave a slow nod but didn't offer the forgiveness Nathan had hoped for. Instead, he simply said, "You've got work to do." Those words hung in the air, and Nathan knew they were more than a simple statement. Isaiah wasn't going to absolve him so easily. Nathan would have to prove he was worthy of redemption, not just with words, but with actions. Nathan left Isaiah's house with a heavy heart. The sun was setting as he walked back to his car, his mind racing with thoughts of how he could ever make amends for what he'd done. As he sat behind the wheel, staring blankly at the dashboard, he did the only thing he could think of. He picked up his phone and called Sarah. She answered on the second ring. "Nathan? How did it go?" "It didn't," Nathan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I apologized, but it's not enough. I don't know how to fix this, Sarah." For a moment, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Sarah's voice came through, steady and clear. "Nathan, this isn't just about one decision. It's about the system you're a part of. You've been so focused on efficiency, you've forgotten what it means to be human." "I know that now," Nathan said, his voice cracking. "But where do I even start?" "Start by understanding why you made that decision in the first place. It's not enough to feel guilty. You have to understand the biases and the system that led you there. And then you have to change it." Nathan closed his eyes, her words hitting him like a wave. She was right. This wasn't just about Isaiah. It was about the deeper issues in the healthcare system, and in himself. "Sarah," he said quietly, "will you help me?" There was a pause, then Sarah's voice softened. "Of course. But Nathan, this isn't going to be easy." "I know," Nathan replied, determination beginning to replace the guilt. "But I have to try." Nathan sat across from Dr. Alan Porter in his mentor's office, the soft light filtering through the large window casting long shadows across the room. Alan, always dressed in his signature tweed jacket, was listening intently, his eyes thoughtful behind his round glasses. Nathan had just finished recounting the events of the last few days, his decision to turn Isaiah away, the discovery of who Isaiah truly was, and the burden of guilt that had begun to consume him. Alan took a deep breath, leaning back in his chair. Nathan, I've known you for years. You're a brilliant surgeon. But being a doctor is about more than precision and skill. It's about humanity. Nathan nodded, his throat tight. He'd heard similar words from Sarah, but coming from Alan, his mentor, his guide, made them feel heavier. I've been thinking a lot about that, Nathan admitted, his voice low. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing patients as people. They became cases, problems to be solved. I don't want to be that doctor anymore, Alan. I don't want to be the man who turned Isaiah Brooks away. Alan's gaze softened as he studied Nathan. You're at a crossroads, Nathan. You can't change what's already happened, but you can change what happens next. You know, Isaiah and I go way back. We were in college together, fighting the same battles in different ways. I've seen the impact he's had on countless lives. What he's done quietly, behind the scenes, it's remarkable. Nathan's heart sank. He hadn't even known about Alan's connection to Isaiah. I didn't realize. That's part of the problem, Alan said gently. You didn't realize because you've been so focused on yourself. But Nathan, it's not too late. Isaiah doesn't need your words. He needs to see that you're willing to change, not for him, but because it's the right thing to do. Nathan sat in silence for a long time, the weight of Alan's words sinking in. He had always prided himself on being a top surgeon, a man who made the right decisions. But now, he realized that he had blind spots, deep-rooted biases that had shaped his actions without him even knowing it. I want to do better, Nathan finally said, his voice quiet but firm. Alan nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Then start by listening. Not just to me, not just to Sarah, but to yourself. You know what needs to be done. Over the next few days, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about Alan's words. He began digging into Isaiah's history, trying to understand the man he had dismissed so easily. Late one night, Nathan sat at his desk, surrounded by books and articles detailing the civil rights movement and the role Isaiah had played in it. He read about the marches, the protests, the quiet victories that Isaiah had fought for over decades. Isaiah had been a young man when he started, full of fire and determination, willing to risk everything for justice. As Nathan pored over the pages, he began to see Isaiah not as a frail old man, but as a pillar of strength, someone who had endured and overcome so much, only to continue giving back to the very communities that had once been denied opportunities. Nathan's heart clenched as he read about the scholarships Isaiah had funded, many of them for aspiring doctors like himself. How had he not known this before? How had he been so blind? He closed the book, the weight of guilt pressing down on him once more. But this time, there was something else alongside the guilt, a desire to understand, to change. He couldn't undo his past actions, but he could learn from them. He could start by acknowledging the privilege that had clouded his vision for so long. Isaiah didn't owe him forgiveness, Nathan realized. But maybe, just maybe, he could earn a chance to make things right. Nathan took a few days off from the hospital, a rare decision for him. He needed time to think, to process everything that had happened. He spent hours walking through the city, the noise of everyday life offering a strange kind of solace. As he walked, his mind kept returning to the same question: why had he turned Isaiah away? It wasn't just about efficiency or the lack of insurance. No, there was something deeper at play. He'd made a split-second decision to dismiss Isaiah, and that decision had been shaped by years of unconscious bias, of seeing patients through the lens of numbers and protocols rather than humanity. Nathan found himself sitting on a bench in a quiet park, the weight of his realizations pressing down on him. He had spent his entire career believing in the meritocratic system that had allowed him to succeed. He had worked hard, earned his place at the top, but he hadn't truly seen the barriers that others faced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nathan made a decision. He couldn't undo the past, but he could confront the biases that had led him here. and he would do everything in his power to make sure he never repeated the same mistakes. One morning, a few days after Nathan's period of self-reflection, a letter arrived at his apartment. The handwriting on the envelope was neat and steady, and Nathan's heart skipped a beat when he saw the name, Isaiah Brooks. He opened the letter with trembling hands, unsure of what to expect. "Dr. Ellis," it began, "I appreciate your visit the other day. It's not often that people in your position come to apologize. But I want to make something clear: my forgiveness is not what you need. You need to forgive yourself and work to change the system that allowed you to make that decision in the first place." Nathan's breath caught in his throat as he continued reading. "The road to redemption is not paved with words, but with actions. You've taken the first step by acknowledging your mistakes. Now, it's up to you to decide what comes next." The letter was signed simply, Isaiah Brooks. Nathan sat down, the letter clutched in his hand. Isaiah's words hit him harder than he had anticipated. Isaiah wasn't holding a grudge, but he wasn't offering absolution either. Instead, he was challenging Nathan to do better, not for Isaiah's sake, but for the sake of the many others who would come after him. For the first time in a long while, Nathan felt a flicker of hope. Isaiah's letter wasn't just a response, it was a call to action. Nathan didn't waste any more time. He called Sarah that evening, his voice filled with a determination she hadn't heard from him in a while. "Sarah, I've been thinking. We need to do more than just apologize to people like Isaiah. We need to make real changes at the hospital, changes that will ensure we never turn away someone like him again." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Sarah responded. "I'm listening." Nathan took a deep breath. "I want to start a new initiative, a program that ensures equal access to care for everyone, regardless of their insurance or financial situation. We'll provide support for underprivileged patients, and we'll start a scholarship fund in Isaiah's name to help more people get into the medical field." Sarah's voice was filled with pride when she spoke. "Nathan, that's incredible. But you know this won't be easy. The hospital board is going to push back hard." "I know," Nathan replied, his jaw set. "But we can't keep doing things the way we've always done them. It's time to shake things up." Sarah agreed, and together they began to lay the groundwork for their plan. Nathan knew there would be resistance. There always was when real change was on the horizon. But he also knew that this was his chance to make amends, to prove that he had learned from his mistakes. He wasn't doing this for Isaiah's forgiveness anymore. He was doing it because it was the right thing to do. Nathan sat at his desk, staring at the email from the hospital. The subject line read, "Isaiah Brooks readmitted to ER." His stomach dropped. Isaiah's health had deteriorated, and he was back in the very hospital where Nathan had once turned him away. He grabbed his coat, already dialing Sarah. "Isaiah's back in the hospital," he said when she picked up. "I'm going to see him." "Hold on," Sarah responded, her voice calm but firm. "You need to think about this. If you go to him now, after everything, are you doing it for him, or for yourself?" Nathan paused, Sarah's words sinking in. Was he rushing over to ease his guilt, or because he genuinely wanted to help? Either way, Isaiah was in a fragile state. "I need to try, Sarah," he finally said. "I need to make sure he gets the care he needs." Sarah sighed. "Okay, but be prepared. His daughter might not want you near him, not after what happened last time." Nathan knew she was right, but he had to at least try. He hung up and hurried to the hospital. When Nathan arrived, he was met with Isaiah's daughter at the entrance to his room. Her arms were crossed, her face a mask of cold fury. "What are you doing here, Dr. Ellis?" she asked, her voice low and controlled. "I came to check on him," Nathan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I just want to help." Her eyes narrowed. "Help? Like the last time you turned him away? My father doesn't need your help, not anymore. We've managed just fine without you." Nathan swallowed hard, but he didn't argue. "Please," he said, his voice softer. "I know I made a mistake, but I'm trying to make things right." She shook her head. "You don't get to make things right just because you feel guilty. My father doesn't need an apology. He needs a doctor who cares about people, not just their insurance status. You'll have to prove that to him, and to me." Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but she had already turned away, disappearing into the room. He stood there for a moment, frozen in place, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He wasn't ready to give up, but he also knew he couldn't force his way back into Isaiah's life. He would have to earn that trust. Nathan spent the next week immersed in his work at the hospital, determined to push forward with the initiative he had discussed with Sarah. He met with various department heads, proposing changes that would ensure equal access to care for every patient, regardless of their financial situation. "We can't keep turning people away because they don't have insurance," Nathan said during one of the meetings. "It's not just about efficiency anymore, it's about fairness. We're supposed to help people, not make judgments about their worth." The room was filled with murmurs of dissent. One of the administrators, a stern woman named Dr. Lyons, shook her head. "Nathan, this is noble, but the hospital runs on funding. We can't just give away services for free." Nathan stood his ground. "It's not about giving anything away. We can partner with organizations, find alternative ways to cover costs. We've done it before with smaller programs. This initiative can work." Sarah, seated next to him, chimed in. "Isaiah Brooks has funded countless scholarships and programs in this very hospital, and we didn't even know it. If we build something like this, we'll find support. This isn't about money, it's about doing what's right." Dr. Lyons remained unconvinced, but others in the room began nodding. The tide was shifting. Nathan knew it wouldn't be easy, but the first step had been taken. The hospital board wasn't as easily swayed. Nathan's proposal had made waves, and now he stood before the hospital's most influential leaders, facing a wall of resistance. "Nathan, this is admirable, but it's not practical," one board member said. "We have a responsibility to the hospital's bottom line." Nathan clenched his fists, keeping his voice steady. "We also have a responsibility to the people we serve. We can't claim to be one of the best hospitals in the country if we're turning away people who need our help." Another board member raised an eyebrow. "And how do you propose we fund this initiative? Where will the money come from?" Nathan had anticipated this question. "We can create partnerships with local businesses, look into grants, even establish a scholarship fund in Isaiah Brooks' name. We've ignored the resources available to us because we've been too focused on profit. It's time to change that." There was a murmur of agreement from a few of the board members, but others remained skeptical. Nathan could feel the tension in the room, but he refused to back down. This was his chance to make things right, not just for Isaiah, but for every patient who had been turned away. After what felt like an eternity, the head of the board finally spoke. "We'll consider it, Dr. Ellis. But know this, if it doesn't work, it will be your career on the line." Nathan nodded, his heart pounding. He had expected nothing less. A few weeks later, the hospital held a small event to announce the creation of the Isaiah Brooks Scholarship Fund. It was a modest gathering, but it marked the first step in the larger initiative Nathan had been fighting for. Nathan stood at the podium, his hands gripping the edges as he spoke. "Isaiah Brooks has spent his life quietly supporting programs that have helped countless people, myself included. This scholarship fund is our way of honoring his legacy and ensuring that his contributions will continue to change lives for years to come." The crowd applauded, but Nathan's eyes were focused on one person, Isaiah's daughter. She stood near the back of the room, her expression unreadable. He couldn't tell if she approved or not, but at least she had shown up. As the event came to a close, Nathan approached her. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice tentative. She looked at him, her face softening just a little. "My father always believed in second chances," she said quietly. "This is a good start, Dr. Ellis. But there's still more to do." Nathan nodded. "I know. And I'm committed to seeing it through." She didn't smile, but there was something in her eyes, an acknowledgement perhaps, that told him he was on the right path. It wasn't full acceptance, not yet, but it was a step toward healing. In the weeks that followed, Nathan threw himself into the work of implementing the changes he had promised. The hospital administration continued to push back, but with Sarah's unwavering support and the growing recognition of Isaiah Brooks' contributions, momentum began to build. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling meeting with the hospital board, Nathan found himself in the hospital's courtyard, sitting on a bench and watching the flow of people coming and going. It struck him how easily he had once dismissed those who didn't fit into his narrow view of success. But now, he saw each patient, each person, as a story, a life deserving of care and respect. Sarah joined him on the bench, her expression thoughtful. "You've done a lot in a short amount of time, Nathan. But change takes patience. You're on the right track." Nathan nodded. "I know it's not going to happen overnight. But for the first time, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. Really matters." Sarah smiled, her eyes warm. "You are." As they sat together, watching the hospital's daily life unfold, Nathan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of peace. He knew there was still a long road ahead, but for the first time, he wasn't focused on his own achievements. He was focused on the people he could help, the lives he could change. And that, he realized, was the real beginning of his redemption. The sound of the hospital pager cut through the quiet evening as Nathan sat at his desk. He had just finished reviewing a patient's file when his eyes landed on the notification: "Isaiah Brooks has been readmitted. Critical condition." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He knew this moment was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. He rushed to the emergency ward, his heart pounding in his chest. As he reached Isaiah's room, he found the elderly man lying in bed, surrounded by monitors beeping steadily, his frail body weaker than Nathan had ever seen. Standing by his bedside was Isaiah's daughter, her expression a mix of sorrow and guardedness. Nathan stepped forward, his voice soft. "How is he?" Isaiah's daughter barely looked at him, her arms crossed. "The doctors say he doesn't have much time. His heart, it's failing." Nathan felt a tightness in his chest. "I want to help. Let me treat him." For a moment she said nothing, her eyes locked on her father. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "He doesn't need your guilt, Dr. Alice. He needs to leave this world with dignity. But if you can do that, if you can treat him like a human being, not a symbol of your redemption, then maybe." Nathan nodded, understanding what she was asking of him. "I will," he said, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. He had one last chance to make this right, not for himself, but for Isaiah. As the night deepened, Nathan stood by Isaiah's bedside. Isaiah's breathing was labored, but his eyes opened slowly as Nathan adjusted the floor. "Mr. Brooks," Nathan began, his voice barely steady. "I'm here. I'm going to take care of you." Isaiah's lips curled into a faint smile, though his eyes were tired. "You've come a long way, Dr. Alice," he rasped, his voice weak but still full of that quiet power Nathan had come to recognize. Nathan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he said, the words catching in his throat. "For everything. I should have seen you as more than just another patient. I should have seen you as a man, someone who deserved my best." Isaiah's eyes flickered with something, understanding, perhaps. "We all make mistakes," he said slowly. "It's what you do after that matters." Nathan felt a lump in his throat. "I'm trying to do better. I want to make things right." Isaiah gave a slow nod, his breathing shallow. "It's not about me, Nathan. It's about what you'll do when I'm gone. Will you keep fighting for those who come after me?" Nathan's eyes stung with unshed tears. "I will. I promise." Isaiah closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the conversation pressing down on both of them. When he opened them again, there was a quiet peace in his gaze. "Good," he whispered. "That's all I ever wanted." The next morning, Isaiah passed away quietly, surrounded by his family. Nathan stayed by his side until the very end, his heart heavy but filled with a sense of purpose. When it was over, Nathan stepped outside the room, his chest tight with grief. Sarah was waiting for him in the hallway, her eyes filled with understanding as she approached. "He's gone," Nathan said, his voice raw with emotion. Sarah nodded, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You did everything you could. You gave him the care he deserved." Nathan shook his head, the weight of his regret still pressing on him. "It wasn't enough. I turned him away once. I can never undo that." Sarah's gaze softened. "But you did everything you could to make it right. That's all anyone can ask." Nathan wiped a hand across his face, the reality of Isaiah's death settling in. It wasn't just about what he had done in the past, it was about what he would do moving forward. Isaiah's words echoed in his mind, "It's what you do after that matters." Nathan knew this wasn't the end. Isaiah's passing wasn't just a moment of closure, it was a call to action. In the days following Isaiah's death, Nathan dedicated himself to ensuring that Isaiah's legacy would live on through the hospital's new program. The Isaiah Brooks Scholarship Fund had gained traction, and Nathan worked tirelessly with Sarah and the hospital board to establish the new initiative, which would provide equal access to care for underprivileged patients. As word spread, other hospitals began to take notice. Nathan found himself fielding calls from doctors and administrators across the country, all eager to implement similar programs in their own institutions. At a press conference to officially launch the Isaiah Brooks Initiative, Nathan stood before a crowd of medical professionals and reporters, his voice steady as he spoke. Isaiah Brooks was a man who dedicated his life to helping others, quietly and without asking for recognition. This initiative is our way of honoring his legacy and ensuring that his work continues to change lives for years to come. The applause was thunderous, but as Nathan stepped down from the podium, he knew that the real work was only just beginning. This was just the first step in a much larger journey, one that would require constant effort and dedication. A few days later, Nathan found himself standing in a quiet cemetery, the wind gently rustling the leaves around him. He stood before Isaiah's grave, a simple headstone marking the final resting place of the man who had changed his life in more ways than one. "I never thanked you," Nathan whispered, his voice carried away by the breeze. "Not just for everything you did for me, but for showing me what it really means to care. I won't let your legacy die with you. I'll carry it forward. I promise." The cemetery was silent, save for the soft rustling of the trees. Nathan stood there for a long time, his heart heavy but at peace. He had made mistakes, big ones, but he had also learned. And that, he realized, was what Isaiah had wanted all along. As he turned to leave, Nathan felt a sense of closure wash over him. He wasn't the same man who had turned Isaiah away that fateful day. He had changed, grown, and become someone worthy of carrying on Isaiah's legacy. Walking through the cemetery, Nathan felt the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. He wasn't defined by his mistakes anymore. He was defined by how he chose to move forward.